Alright, before I really get started on part 2, I'm real big on honesty. If I screwed up, I'm going to admit it. When I was at Candace's, while I was still working at Subway in Julesburg, and I was staying with Candace in Chapel, I found Devin Cockerill's card with her phone number on it, and I called her up, and I said a bunch of really mean stuff to her. My safe place was gone. I had a panic attack nonstop about that ever since. I haven't had a safe place ever since. There was a couple of times where I felt as if I was safe. That was when I was with Jamie and the boy, or when I was with Natalie. Her voice calmed me down. It made my life better. Same thing with Jamie and the boy. Oh my God, like he makes everything. We'll get back to that. That's quite a ways in the future. So, I'm in Virginia. We just left Virginia Beach, and I parked my car behind where Miss Alicia worked at her request. And I was having problems with the roads there. They had problems with the roads there too. And I was trying to look for a job. I didn't know how to do the computer stuff. You guys have noticed this is an issue that I have to this day. So I was over at the Starbucks during the day, and Natalie couldn't come see me. She was at home, and she was on opiates because her leg was messed up. And for somebody who's in Virginia to recover from opiates and an opiate addiction that she started in Colorado because of her dad. Her boyfriend Tim had stolen her dog and tried to use her dog to get her to come back. And he was threatening suicide, and she was having a lot of issues with that. This is Tim Beeson. He had picked her up. According to her, she was in school, and Tim came and met her on his motorcycle, and she was totally impressed by his motorcycle. Pierre and I had a falling out already because Pierre, likes to think of himself as a ladies' man. He's a guitar player. Any of you ladies who have ever dated a guitar player, you already know what he's about. He's about getting laid. One of the ladies from Starbucks was trying to help me, and he was busy trying to get attention from her. For about 45 minutes, he was being real friendly with her, pretending like we were buddy-buddy, and we were. But he was laying it on thick, trying to use me to get laid. And I needed Mary's help. I needed him to leave me alone so that I could do that. So, anyway, I should get back to Virginia. So I'm in Virginia, staying behind where Alicia works, and there was, she was helping me to get a job. Her and Natalie both. They wanted me to move to Virginia. Both of them. They were laying it on real heavy and real thick. They were telling me that they were looking up apartments for me. And I was explaining to them I wasn't sure if I was ready to move to Virginia. My whole safety network there was gone. But whenever I was hanging out with Natalie, Alicia was always there. So Alicia, she always dominated the conversation. It was always about Alicia. And if we started talking about Natalie, Alicia had to chime in. So we mostly just listened to Alicia while we hung out. Alicia called me every day, or came and saw me at Starbucks every day. She'd call me and let me know when she was having a cigarette break so I could come see her. I had finally been able to find some paper applications, and I was filling them out. And Natalie had shown up with her Narcotics Anonymous group and her mother to see me. She didn't have a lot of time, but she helped me to fill out an application for Petco, um, or PetSmart. A couple of them actually, for a couple of different PetSmarts. And she actually sat down with me. She understood that you have to show me, so she sat down and she actually showed me. She understood what help I needed, which nobody since has. And that was after I'd given her that picture to give to her mother, and I was supposed to draw one of Alicia as well, which I never got to. And Natalie didn't like Alicia's boyfriend. She hated him. He was a Christian, and he was real heavy into Christianity, and Alicia was trying to be a Christian for him. She's not really much of a Christian. She doesn't even read the Bible. But at that aside, I read the Bible every day, or at least I used to. At that point, I'd brought my Bible with me, and I was reading it every day. And they wanted me to get a new phone, one that has GPS. They were insistent that I get a phone that has GPS on it so I wouldn't get lost all the time anymore, because I got lost a lot. And there was, I was spending a lot of time at Starbucks, and I really needed a friend. And I tried calling people because, I mean, I couldn't depend on Natalie and Alicia the whole time I was there. That's just too much, you know? That's too much for them young ladies to handle, or have to deal with. Well, Alicia kept on telling me I should just go over and see her. Alicia kept inviting me over to the house, and I was like, I'm not going over there until Natalie says it's okay. There was a good reason for that. Well, while I was at Starbucks, Miss Jerry's son, his name is Tyler Frericks. He's from Chapel. Her kids' names are Donnie Sparks, Jenny Frericks, and Tyler Frericks. And then there's Uncle Mike and Lana and Amanda Engeline, who are also part of that group. Well, Uncle Mike wasn't involved in what went down, but the rest of them were. I'd already helped Miss Jerry move out of 7 places where she was supposedly being abused, but then several of those times I moved her out of one place where she was being abused to another place where she had previously moved out of because she was being abused. That's because Miss Jerry cannot function without a relationship, and she doesn't have the finances to take care of herself without somebody else. Same thing with Lana and Amanda. Amanda couldn't make it on her own, and Lana couldn't make it on her own. So Amanda gets paid $11 an hour to live with her mother. She's her mother's in-home care person. So while I'm in Virginia, Tyler puts up a post. It's very racist. It's about kicking Colin Kaepernick. A soldier should go kick Colin Kaepernick in the throat for not standing for the national anthem. The national anthem is mandatory. We don't live in a constitutional America. We live in a Nazi country. When nationalism is required, you are no longer living in a democracy. You are no longer living in a place where your opinion matters. So I got into an argument with them about that post, and they were trying to insinuate that, because I had typed, if a soldier punches Colin Kaepernick in the throat, somebody should punch that soldier in the throat. And they went out of their way to pretend like I was saying that soldiers should be punched in the throat. That's not what I was saying at all. What I was saying is that any soldier who is going to go punch a civil rights activist in the throat is definitely Nazi, not American, and the punishment should fit the crime. There's a woman named Amy Valkyrie, and she was pissed off about the racism too, and she got into an argument with all of them on there as well. And when I asked Amy to not argue with them and explain that they're good people, they just are taking things wrong, Amy listened. She was respectful and she stopped. She even apologized for arguing with them. I didn't get that same respect. I didn't get that same respect out of Miss Jerry. Matter of fact, Miss Jerry and some of Tyler's friends had taken part in basically harassing me, and I was done with it. I let Miss Jerry know it. I was like, I thought you were a good person. I honestly used to believe you were a good person. And so she blocked me. And when she blocked me, there was no reason for me to keep all the rest of them on there. So I blocked all of them. I blocked everybody in that group because Miss Jerry was the only one out of all of them that I trusted. And I could tell stories about how wonderful Miss Jerry is, because she is. So that argument, it really took a toll on me, and my phone was almost out of minutes. And when that happened, one of Tyler's friends was a racist little prick and kept on typing at me. Well, when I got my new phone, I'll explain that to you. Um, Natalie and Alicia wanted me to get a new phone, and I was planning on getting a phone from Cricket as soon as I had the money. And Alicia had hooked me up with a job at Labor Ready. So I went to Labor Ready and I worked in North Carolina for a couple of days cleaning up flood damage. Well, alright, we haven't gotten that far yet because I haven't talked about the flood. Alright, so there was a hurricane that came through on the 8th of October. And I was already staying behind where Alicia worked at that point. And when the hurricane came through, there was a couple of soldiers, and I want to say they were from the Air Force. I know that it's a naval area, but something about it, I was pretty sure they were in the Air Force. They had a blue pickup truck kind of thing, and it was like a crew cab with a super short bed. And I don't know the name of the thing, but if I told you, you'd probably recognize it. Well, their truck broke down, and I gave them a ride home, which was not that far from the mall there in Chesapeake. And it took a few hours to do that. They did all of my texting for me. And I actually dipped a cup out the window and took a drink of some water. That's how high up the water was. I was able to lean out my window and scoop some up. When we were about a block or two from their house, I dropped them off, and they said that, if I go any further, I'm going to be, my car is going to start floating. So I needed to turn around there, and they were sure they could make it the rest of the way. So I left them there, and I went back to Starbucks. Now, at the time, I've got my telephone that I can use for texting. Anything else, I have to wait for Starbucks to be open because my computer's going to die if I'm on it for too long. But I went and parked at Starbucks so that I could use the internet and use my computer until it died. And Natalie and Alicia had let me know that they had gotten into a car accident again. Somebody had sideswiped them. This is Natalie's third car accident in just a couple of months. Well, I went to Walmart after that, and I was a hold of a lot of different people. I was a hold of Russell and Amy Witcher and a few other people, and Candace. And I was letting them know about the hurricane, and they were wanting to make sure I was okay and safe. I was. I was in Walmart, and it was leaking through the ceiling, but it was all right. I actually had gotten a branch that is basically a small tree stuck in my car. I'd seen it coming across the road, but it was so rainy that, like, I didn't even feel the impact. It was actually wedged in between the springs on my car, and I didn't notice that until I stopped. I pulled it out, and, my car was fine. And so a few days went by, and me and Natalie are still talking to each other, and, they want to take me somewhere special. They took me to Norfolk, where there's a pagoda there and a pier. And we went to that pagoda, and on the way there, Natalie and Alicia were telling me about the apartment that they had found for me. And they also called Miss Shelley, and they were trying to convince Miss Shelley to get away from Ted Bollinger. They were telling her that they wanted Miss Shelley in Virginia where she was safe because Ted was evil. And that conversation lasted about 45 minutes. We stopped at a Chinese place, and the picture, I'll probably post it up. In the picture, you can see the Chinese food in the picture at the pagoda. And of course, the tide was pretty high at that point because we were waiting on the hurricane. You know, this is maybe the 6th or the 7th. We knew the hurricane was coming. The water was really high. And me and Natalie started talking, but then Alicia wanted to talk about religion. So we listened to Alicia talking about religion for about 35-40 minutes. And Alicia had to go back and get her purse. There was something in it. I don't remember what it was for. But I remember while she was talking nonstop, I finally chimed in and started talking over her because Natalie had this look on her face like she wanted to say something. And the 4 or 5 times that she had tried to say something, Alicia spoke up over her. So when Alicia went back to get her purse, I let Natalie know that we got plenty of time. We'll find time. We will. There's plenty of it, and I really wanted to hear what she had to say. And she really wanted to talk to me, and she let me know that. And she said that she was sorry that it wasn't just me and her, that her sister, you know, she couldn't go anywhere without her sister because her leg was messed up. And they weren't able to convince Miss Shelley to move to Virginia. Then the hurricane happened, and then after the hurricane, I got the job at Labor Ready because of Alicia. Alicia hooked me up with that job. And I went to work, and I came back after work, and I saved my money, and I saved some so I could go back to work, and I saved some for the bills that I had to pay, which I paid. And I used some for my coffee, and by the time my birthday rolled around, I only had $20. Well, just prior to my birthday, Alicia wanted to do something nice for me. So since my phone was almost out of minutes, I had like seven credits on it left. Basically, that's 7 minutes that I could talk on my flip phone here. So, let's see when the last message was. Inbox. The last message was from Natalie on October 11th, 2016. She typed, "I love you. I will see you tomorrow. Please don't apologize for having feelings, son." I was having a lot of anxiety about being there, about having my support network gone, and I didn't want them to be my sole support network. Matter of fact, I felt like crap because, you know, that was how it was. They were doing everything for me. They were teaching me how to fill out job applications on the internet and giving me a place to stay behind where Alicia worked. And Alicia talked to me every day. I mean, she was wonderful. But her and her sister were having problems. They were fighting over a boy. So I got my new phone hooked up. Alicia actually hooked that up for me. And it ended up being a severely cracked HTC phone with baby blue trim around it. And it looked like somebody used it for target practice with a BB gun. And at first it wasn't a big problem. I mean, it was sending stuff on its own, but I didn't know how word prediction worked. And, you know, it didn't have everything in word prediction in there yet. But I was, now I had a phone that could connect to the internet, which this is a flip phone. It doesn't connect to the internet. You only have space for 200 incoming messages and 200 outgoing messages once you go beyond that, you have to start erasing stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that I thought would be on my phone that I had erased because I had run out of room. And I was there to rescue Miss Natalie, so it was her stuff that I saved on there. It's kind of a important thing to save evidence. It's important to save information when there's somebody at risk, because if something happens to them, and she was high risk. Um, she was a heroin addict who had gone through sexual abuse at the hands of her dad, and her ex-boyfriend was threatening to kill himself still, and he still wouldn't let her have her dog. I had actually thought about going over and stealing her dog from him and bringing it to Virginia with me, but I decided against that. But she was really sad about not having her dog. So now that my phone had internet, I was arguing with Tyler Frerich's friend, who is a racist asshole, and he didn't even know how to spell the N-word right. He only put one G in it, and he just kept it up. So I was pissed off at sending him, you ducking this and you ducking that, so I typed in the word fucking, and then there's, he was being a monster, so I let him know that. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff that he was doing, and I was all at it. I'm like, dude, if you're gonna play this, I had already blocked everybody, and with him, I was enjoying arguing with him, believe it or not, letting him know, taking out my aggression on him, and that is what I was doing. He was being an asshole to me. He was presenting himself as an easy target for me to take it out on. That's something I complain about other people doing. I'm sure you'll notice that hypocrisy. So, Natalie got into a third car accident. She got into a fourth accident. I'm sorry. Um, the third accident since I'd been there. This accident was because one of her friends was drunk, and it was just before my birthday, and he was driving super fast down the interstate, and he tried to pull a cookie, and Natalie had whiplash. She was in a lot of pain, and I let her know that she didn't have to come hang out with me on my birthday. I could handle it by myself, but I really wanted to have a picnic with her, and she sent me back a message that said I would love to. So on my birthday, we were going to have a picnic over in her driveway. That was kind of the plan. Neither one of us wanted to travel in the vehicle. Well, my money from Labor Ready was almost gone. I was down to $20, and uh, I was supposed to meet Natalie at around 11 o'clock the next day. I was supposed to meet her around 11 o'clock on my birthday. Well, I got to the McDonald's over on South Military Highway, which is where she lives, and she had tried to get me a job at Vico Construction, which is where her mom worked, and it's literally right across the street from where she lives. And they were doing road construction at the time, right outside of Natalie's house, or her mother's house. So I was supposed to meet up with her at about 11. Well, Alicia really wanted to go. Really wanted to go. So Natalie was like, all right, well, we'll go with Miss Alicia. And I was like, I really wanted to spend time just with you, even if it's just a few minutes, just to touch base. Because at that point, number one, I was worried about her because, she threatened to kill herself and then tried. And I didn't want to make her feel abandoned, but at the same time, I didn't want to make her feel smothered. And I didn't have anybody else there, and I felt as if it was just too much for me to depend on those young women to be my support, my sole support network there. And about that time, I was talking to Neil DiMaccio, who used to work at Starbucks in Colorado, and he was trying to help me work through it. And Candace Dale had let me know that she actually kicked me out of her place because I quit my job, and I didn't quit my job. I lost my job because of heart complications. And I was also talking to Amanda Demet. She's on my Facebook as Amanda and Corey Demet, but it was actually, uh, when I knew her from Chapel, she was actually the first girl I ever asked out. She told me later on that I was her first crush, which is odd to me because she told me no when I asked her out. We were working at Cabela's together, corporate offices, and my mother said, Amanda thinks you're the best thing since sliced bread. So I asked Amanda out, and she said no. Um, the first woman to ever say yes to going out on a date with me was Caroline Coffey. That was Jamie Curtis's best friend. Jamie Curtis was dating Chris Stegeman at the time, and he was kind of sort of my best friend at the time. I guess we'll go back forward to Virginia. I'm sorry I keep jumping back in time. But um, my birthday came around, and I had been in the McDonald's parking lot there for a few days, or for a few hours in the hot sun, and I used some of that $20 to get a drink, and I mean I was sweating bad. It was terrible. And finally, around 6:30 or so, Natalie let me know to come over to the house and pick them up. And Alicia decided that she wanted to drive, which is good because I didn't know the roads there worth a crap. And although I had GPS on my phone, I didn't know how to use it yet. When Alicia had hooked me up with the phone, it was about 2 hours worth of trying to get my phone number from this phone over to the broken phone. And that ended up screwing me a lot later on because now I didn't have my phone number, so the people who I had given my phone number to that I wasn't able to reach anymore, they couldn't call me even if they wanted to. But we she quit her job about 10 minutes after doing that, and she promised me that she would show me how to use that telephone. Well, she never did. Um, on my birthday, we we went out to Elliot's Coffee Grounds. That was Natalie and Alicia's idea. And at Elliot's Coffee Grounds, we drew some pictures and we talked mostly about Alicia. And when Alicia went to go to the bathroom, Natalie let me know that she she and Alicia were fighting over a boy, and that she's sorry that Alicia had come along that day. That Alicia is her best friend, and she wasn't wanting to have complications of that sort. Well, then her mom found her heroin. We were at Elliot's Coffee Grounds when her mom found that, and so her and her sister spent the last 20 minutes that we were hanging out texting, and then on the way back, because it was cut short, it was about 9:30 by that point, and considering it's a 45-minute drive from their place to Elliot's Coffee Grounds and about 45 minutes back, we stopped at Wendy's, and then after we got food at Wendy's, we went across the street to a gas station there, and we got some lottery tickets. Alicia went in and she got some lottery tickets, and they were scratch tickets. So I went in and I got us some real lottery tickets. And then we went back to Natalie's house, and Alicia had been driving the whole time. I was afraid of Natalie going through the windshield. She was sitting on my lap in the car, and I was holding her, and every time that we would come to a stoplight, Alicia would throw her arm across me and Natalie, like, whew. So Natalie pretty well just got squished that whole ride, because he didn't want anything to happen to her. We got back to her house and dropped her off, and I was worried that was the last time I was ever going to get to see her. I just had this sick feeling in my stomach. And so the day after my birthday, Alicia had asked how I was doing. I told her I wasn't doing so good, and I was hoping she'd respond, but she didn't. And Natalie sent me one text that day too, and it was just one text, After that, she didn't respond. I wasn't sure what I had done wrong. At the other end of the building that Alicia worked in, on one side was the Starbucks, and on the other side was, I believe it was Five Guys Pizza, but I'm not sure. And there was a guy who worked there who was friends with both of them. He sold me a ticket to a benefit concert. They had a benefit concert for Natalie's leg there in Virginia, underneath a overpass there. So I bought this ticket, and I was planning on going, but I had a severe panic attack. I mean, Candace had thrown me away, and Miss Jerry and the kids had thrown me away, and I'd been arguing with this jackass on Facebook like I shouldn't have. And, you know, it's a novelty. It's a new phone. It's a smartphone. You can do internet stuff on it, you know? So, when I went there to Natalie and Alicia's house, I couldn't find the place. Alicia's boyfriend at Starbucks actually had another lady who was at Starbucks show me how to hook that up, because I'd been trying for about 4 hours and it just wasn't working. Well, I finally got my GPS working and she showed me how to use it. And so after after my birthday, the second day after my birthday, I texted Natalie and Alicia both, and they both responded. You know, they just one text. You know, and I'm having a lot of anxiety at this point. I called Neil DiMaccio, and I was talking to him. And he's somebody who's I've known since my first days at Starbucks in Boulder. So, my phone's not working right, and it's sending whatever it wants. And at this point, it's just starting to call people, which it hadn't done previously. It had called people on accident, but it was, you know, something where I had it out and I was using it. So I had called Candace apparently, and I could hear her voice on the phone. And I'm like, what the hell? I blocked her. I realized it was the phone. I have the same phone number. It's just a different phone that it's on. And it was also in Alicia's name. Like I said, they were extremely good to me. They just did things to help me that ended up being hurtful. I mean, my flip phone, you know, it worked fine. It didn't hook up to the internet, but when I texted stuff, it sent what I wanted it to. It didn't remember something that I had argued with somebody 2 days ago and try putting that into every conversation. And you can look at my Facebook at that point in time. There's two different types of messages there. One of them is the messages from my phone, and they're all sorts of messed up. And then there's the ones that I had typed on my computer, and those all came out exactly how I meant to type them. I was just overwhelmed. And the third day, like, my phone was doing its own thing. I mean, the night before, I had tried to call them because I'm having a panic attack. You know, I'm afraid I'm never going to see Natalie again, and I'm afraid that, you know, this panic attack is going to scare off everybody. I don't have a support network, and I don't have the money to leave, even if I wanted to. I mean, I'm stuck there, and I have nobody to talk to except for myself. And I hurt myself again working at a labor ready, so my back was in severe pain, and I'm stuck in my car, and my phone's doing its own thing. And then it started doing because where it was cracked up here in the corner especially. I mean, it was cracked, the whole screen was literally cracked. But right up here where it's got the send thing, you know, that's where a major crack is. So, I mean, if I move the screen wrong, it's sending messages or trying to call people. The sending messages, that's because the part where it says send is also under a crack. But it was calling people on its own, and it was calling whoever I had called last, because if you press call on your phone and you press it twice, it calls whoever you called last. So, because the crack was over that, it was calling Alicia because Alicia was the last person that I had called. So I was like, God, this is fucking sucking. So I tried calling Natalie, and her phone, literally the whole time I'd known her phone didn't work as far as the answering machine went. It was full. That's because she had people like Tim texting her all the time, and a lot of people, you know, that she didn't want in her life anymore, harassing her. And so she'd been used to those kind of guys in her life. It made perfect sense why she, not her in specific, but why her family would assume the things that they did. What happened is I couldn't get the phone to work, and Alicia was taking all of the stuff that was being sent as if I had meant to send it. And when I was trying to explain that that's not what I was trying to send, that's not what it was sending. And like there was probably close to, between the two of them, there was probably close to 100 telephone calls. I mean, it was driving me fucking bonkers. And I wasn't able to sleep. I was having a severe panic attack. I was afraid that Natalie and Alicia would never talk to me again. And I hadn't done anything wrong. You know, I was afraid that they had gotten in trouble for being my friend, which turned out to be true. So I decided, all right, my phone isn't going to allow me to communicate with them in a fashion that is actual communication. It does whatever it wants. And they're probably thinking I'm some sort of crazy fucking wingnut calling them 100 times and texting them a bunch of mean shit. And I'm frustrated because when it sends something mean, I'm like, oh my god, I hope she doesn't read that. There's no way to erase it. I'm trying to retype it so that it doesn't, but it's not working. And then midway through what I'm trying to type, it sends it. And I'm like, oh my god, and it's auto-correcting everything. And I can't go back and change it. And I need to go back and proofread it. And I'm having a severe panic attack. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go to her house and I'm going to knock on the door and explain to her my phone is so fucked up and I'm sorry. I hadn't slept in about 4 days by that point. 5 days. And there was 2 days worth of, between those 2 days, there was probably 100 phone calls to them. And I was like, oh my god, they're going to think all sorts of crazy shit. And I got to their house and the GPS said to make a U-turn and I hadn't slept in so long that I just tried to make a U-turn right there. And I got stuck between two road cones. And I realized when I was making the turn that I wasn't going to make it completely through the turn at the speed that I was going. So I took my foot off of the gas and I basically coasted in between the two road cones and I couldn't get the car to go from there. I was just stuck there. And I was scared shitless. I'm staring right at Natalie and Alicia's mom's house. I'm like, oh my god, like this is the creepiest shit ever. I mean, I'm stuck in the road. I'm scared shitless because their house is right there, and this is what I wanted. And I delivered the wheelchair to her right after my birthday so that she had it, you know. And then a car drove past me, and it honked its horn because, like, it had to. It was coming around a corner, and it's a highway. It's not. It's not a small road in Chapel, Nebraska. So this car passed me going pretty quick, and it sucked. It was scary as shit. And so I laid on the horn so that people wouldn't come around the corner and careen into me. Well, that's about the point that Natalie's mother came out, because I was still laying on the horn, and she mouthed the words, I'm going to call the cops, and I mouthed the words, thank you, back. I was so grateful. I mean, I was stuck in the road and I needed help. And I was severely dehydrated, and so when the cops showed up, you know, I hadn't broken the law, so they couldn't arrest me. Alright, so that phone that I got from Alicia, the thing that really ultimately made me realize that I had to talk to them in person, we had all talked about how texting is the worst form of communication. And we all agreed that if there was a miscommunication in text, we would call and talk to each other. That was between me, Maddie, Alicia, and Natalie. And when Alicia said, you showed your true colors and a few other things like that over those texts, I was so frustrated. Like, there's nothing I can do to defend myself in texting. And now I have an even worse phone that's sending stuff on its own, and it's making everything 100 times worse. And I'm having a severe panic attack, and all the people that were friends of mine all threw me away over stupid fucking assumptions instead of asking me what was going on. And most of them I told what was going on. Miss Jerry, I had even stuck up for on that racist post to Amy Valkyrie. Even though Amy Valkyrie didn't do anything wrong, she was standing up against racism. So, I knew that Natalie would do anything to make her sister happy, including blowing her own head off. And, these were the first positive people in my life since I had hurt my back. These were the first people who were positive to me since I hurt my back. Devin was positive to me that one day at her house. But after that, it wasn't positive. It was her saying that she would talk to me and then not doing so and not doing so. Meanwhile, every time she doesn't show up and keep her word, it's making it worse. And it made it extremely uncomfortable to be at Starbucks. And I was in 100 times worse situation when I was in Virginia, because at Starbucks I could at least go outside and hopefully flag down somebody I knew, because I couldn't walk that far, and they could come talk to me and I'd have some company. Well, in Virginia I didn't have any company but myself, and when I was in that car after my birthday, for 2 days I couldn't get out of my car. I mean, I literally, I would lean over and pee out the door because I was in so much pain. And I didn't have any money anymore. All of my money had been spent on my birthday. I mean, on my birthday I was down to 20 bucks. It didn't last long. And I made sure that I saved enough gas to where I could go to work at Labor Ready, but I needed to be physically healed up enough to do that. And so when I went over to Natalie's house and the cops showed up and I was severely dehydrated, and they promised me that my car would be there, it would be fine, they weren't going to tow it, and they put me in cuffs and put me in the back seat of their vehicle and told me they were taking me to the hospital. And I explained to the officer that they're not going to help me at the hospital. They're going to give me a piece of paper and kick me out the door, basically, which is actually what happened. He told me that wasn't going to happen, and everything that I told him was going to happen ended up happening. He hadn't been through it before. See, once he drops you off, what happens to you after that, he's not even thinking about. Well, the hospital, they had a lady come in. She was a mental health specialist, and there was also a nurse who came in. And the nurse came in and looked at my feet and yelled at the other nurse, "He's got diabetes." It's because I got foot rot, you know. It's not diabetic ulcers, it's just foot rot. But because of that going on my paperwork, I thought I had diabetes. And believe it or not, I had to pause the video just a few minutes ago because the evidence of that just arrived. I'm going to be spending the night taking pictures of that so that I can have it electronically, so that there's a copy of it, so that somebody can look at it, because I am going to be going to jail for defending myself. And as a result, it would be nice if the truth were out there for someone to see. No lawyer is going to go through that massive quantity of stuff, although they really should get motivated to do so, because there's millions of dollars to be had in the way that I was treated. Just suing the shit out of everybody. So, when I got out of the hospital, well, the mental health lady, I explained to her what was going on. My friend Sage was gonna send me some money for my birthday to Natalie and Alicia's house. They had said that I could use their address, so I did. I used their address on job applications too, because that's what they told me to use it for. And they said for my birthday, the stuff that was going to show up, they'd make sure I got it. And Joanna Taylor, she had bought some tattoo equipment from Lexi Woods, and they were going to send it to me in Virginia, and I was going to split it between myself and Natalie and Alicia. Well, on my birthday, when I found out her mom found her heroin, I I got afraid at that point. I was afraid that if I gave her that kind of stuff, that she was gonna trade it in for heroin. I treated her the same way that her family had been treating her, and it was wrong of me to do so. Although I didn't treat her that way, I definitely called up Joanna and I told her not to send that tattoo equipment because Natalie was on heroin. And so Joanna didn't send it. And I still have that equipment. It's actually at a friend's house in Chapel, Nebraska, who's a tattoo artist. I was also going to give a set to Mahalia. There was 8 tattoo machines in all. I mean, it's a lot of tattoo machines. One of those Andrew Witcher has. I gave it to him as a gift for helping me out. So when I went to their house and then I ended up at the hospital and the hospital released me, they gave me a piece of paper saying where the services were. The closest service was 8 miles away. I didn't have enough money to get on a bus. My back is severely screwed up and I don't have a vehicle. And I found out that they had towed it. And they couldn't arrest me because getting stuck in the road dehydrated as shit with a vehicle that won't run is not against the law. Honking your horn so that you don't get ran into is an intelligent thing to do. And that mental health specialist lady that I spoke with, she's like, well, given everything that you've gone through, I'm really sorry that this happened to you. They put some fluids in me because I was severely dehydrated, and those fluids actually burned my eyes for days because here, or in the middle of the country, the saline water is like 0.2% salt. Well, in Virginia, the stuff they give you is 0.9% salt. It's almost 1% salt. And Brenda Dickinson, Aunt B, she was in contact with me. My phone charger was in the car, so I didn't have a phone charger. When my phone ran out, I was getting a hold of Neil DiMaccio and Alex Furman and Brandon Ratner and anybody that I could think of to try to help me get my car out of the impound. And when I finally got my car out of the impound, well, I went to Food Lion. That's where I was supposed to wait for the money, but the money didn't show up. Alex wasn't able to send it, and Brandon wasn't able to send it. So, I mean, they were able to eventually get me some money, though. It was enough to get me back to Boulder, Colorado, almost. But with my vehicle being an impound, the officer told me that if they impounded my car, to let him know and he would take care of it. Well, I let him know, and he did not take care of it, but he did eventually come and get me. He picked me up and took me to where my car was. Aunt B had helped to make sure that I had the information for my insurance verification to show them so I could get my car out. And my insurance actually paid to get my car out, thank goodness. So I drove my car from there, because, you know, they took me to the Chesapeake Hospital, and the impound lot was a few miles away. I walked most of the way to the impound lot before the officer got a hold of me and ultimately came and picked me up. And when I got to my car, I realized that the cops had really fucked up my car. My back was screwed up and I had to open the back hatch, and I couldn't open the back hatch because one of the 2 side things had actually been torn completely off. So I drove to the Cricket store, and of course, Alicia and Natalie, neither one of them worked there at this point. And I was taking pictures of my car and how messed up it was, and I sent Natalie and Alicia each a text. They were both identical. They said, I'm sorry about what happened. I understand if you guys are scared of me. If you are, give me a call and let me know, and I'll never get a hold of you again. So Natalie called me on Alicia's phone to tell me that her family was afraid of me and she didn't want me to talk to them again. I felt that was fair. I mean, if I had been in their position, I probably would have thought the same things. So I had to understand Rose as a mother and the way that she was probably thinking and the things that she was probably putting her daughter through for being friends with me and the shame and the embarrassment of it. And although I was on the phone with officers trying to report against the officers for breaking my vehicle, um, I decided that leaving the state so that Natalie and Alicia and their family could feel safe was more important than going after the police for vandalism against my vehicle. So I got in my vehicle and I started driving, and I stopped at a little gas station um, in some of them rolling hills they got there in Virginia, and I called up Natalie or Maddie to let her know what was going on, and she told me that what I did was creepy and that I had threatened Natalie's family and it was fucked up and not to talk to her again. So I was like, all right, I won't. I was heartbroken at that point. My only two real friends, Natalie and Maddie, who they were on drugs, but they were still good to me, and now they weren't. They weren't going to be a part of my life. But I kept on keeping on, and I drove to Boulder, Colorado, and I had some issues with not having enough money to get to Boulder, but I did eventually make it. And by the time I got to Boulder, I got to deal with people had already heard rumors that I had stalked some girl in Virginia. So I'm having to deal with that out of these meth heads who, I mean, some of them I'd seen them before. I knew who they were. I just didn't know their names. And Maddie wasn't able to go because she was on probation, for methamphetamines. So, I mean, it's not like it was a big surprise, but it was. I mean, when I left Virginia, I just wanted to go back to Boulder and see my friends and tell them that I loved them and I missed them and I needed to heal up. Well, that didn't get to happen in Boulder. Um, and I had blocked Natalie and Alicia when I left Virginia. And after a few months of being harassed, I unblocked them and tried to get a hold of them to put a stop to it. At first, I was nice about it. I mean, if you're not friendly with somebody and you need their help, if you're not friendly with them, they don't want to help. So you basically have to kiss their ass. And I didn't type anything that was ass kissing. I typed the truth. I mean, I was scared of them by that point. And I'd always been scared of Alicia because she didn't think the same way as Natalie. Natalie basically did what Alicia wanted. Um, so, well, it was hell. I finally got out of Virginia, got to Boulder, had to deal with those people, and probably around late November, early December, it was too much for me. I finally had gotten a place of my own. I was in low income in Chapel, Nebraska, and I took my tools there, and I was trying to make a life of myself there, and like the only people that I had to talk to were just negative all the time. By that point, Aunt B's rheumatoid arthritis is hurting her every day. She's in severe pain, and she doesn't have anything positive to say ever at this point. And she'd say a whole bunch of negative stuff, on repeat, and then she'd say, "Oh, I need to just stop saying that stuff, and the Lord will fix me, and I just have to have faith." And yeah, the Lord didn't fix her. He made her hurt worse, if it is the Lord who done so. So, I tried again to go back to Boulder and see my friends, and I actually ended up getting called other names at that point, a child molester and a rapist. And I'm like, all right, I'm not dealing with this. I'm staying the fuck out of Boulder and fuck those people. And there was a few friends of mine that I had reached out to try to help get stop it at that point. One of them was Pierre, and he was an asshole about it. And another one was Maverick Constantine, who was an asshole about it. And Maverick Constantine, we had our own falling out over this situation too. So I was in Chapel, Nebraska, and I was getting threatened and I couldn't go see my friends, and some of those threats were even on the internet by that point. And I tried to get a hold of the police to put a stop to it, and they brushed me off, told me they had real police work to do, and things like that. Well, come January, I'd had a really severe panic attack, and people were complaining that I was suicidal on the internet. Of course, I'm fucking suicidal. I don't get to see my friends or family. Everybody in my life is negative. I mean, when I was on Pearl Street, I was so many people's positivity. So many people told me, dude, if it wasn't for you, I'd have fucking killed myself. And most of those people abandoned me afterwards. Now, after I left Virginia, I was done with Miss Jerry and all of them. I was done with Natalie and Maddie and all of them, and I didn't have any desire to have that bullshit in my life. I still love them. I just, no, if I'm not worth talking to, don't bother. If you're gonna take everything in texting wrong and treat me like shit over it, just don't bother. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people who were inviting me to go see them, and I really wanted to go see them, and when I'd go to see them, basically they wouldn't anything for 3 days. About 40 different people did this, where they would say that they would meet me and I'd show up, and they didn't show up. But Neil DiMacchio did. He was one of the few. I guess I should get on to video number 3 here.